Good morning. The topic for today is hospital oral surgery. By end of the topic, you should be able to carry out the necessary steps for admission of patient in the hospital. List out at least 4 basic investigation that is required for general anesthesia. Seek referral from other specialties in specific situation. The hospital has got the responsibility to provide comprehensive oral health care of the patient as well. So, hospital oral care varies from ward consultation to emergency care and elective oral surgery. As many oral surgery procedures can be carried out under local anesthesia in a clinic, some needs to be done in hospital. So, those which needs hospital care will be medically compromised patient. If there is a major procedure like fractures or any cyst or tumor excision, uncooperative patients, multiple extraction which has to be carried out due to time factor, strict asepsis protocol when the patient is compromised, post-surgical complication if you are expecting any post-surgical complications like hemorrhage, then it is better to carry out those procedures in a hospital setup, or any other procedures that is needed for a patient who is hospitalized for some other cause, like if the patient has got some joint replacement to be done and he has been hospitalized, and then if you want any clearance or any foci of sepsis has to be evaluated and ruled out, probably all those procedures will be carried out in hospital. So what are the general guidelines for admission into the hospital, and what are the guidelines that has to be followed in the operating room are the two broad topics that we'll be seeing in this class. So first we'll see about the steps involved in admission into hospital. So if a patient walks into your clinic and if you feel that that procedure cannot be carried out under local anesthesia in a clinic setup, then probably you need to refer it to a hospital. So once you have decided to admit the patient, then admit the patient. If it is an elective procedure, then you admit the patient 24 hours before surgery. Get a concern or an opinion from the anesthetist and physician to evaluate the fitness for general anesthesia, whether the patient can undergo general anesthesia. So, for the anesthetist to review the patient, the routine investigation has to be advised for him to go through the general status of the patient, RBC count, hemoglobin, white blood cells, platelet count, clotting time, chest radiograph, ECG, blood sugar levels, and any other investigation that is needed for that particular patient according to the need, according to his physical status. So when you refer a patient to an hospital, the hospital will be requiring the following details to get admitted. So name, age, sex, permanent address, brief personal family history, and details of clinical examination which you will be providing, reasons for admission and provisional diagnosis, anticipated stay, duration of stay in the hospital, details of previous hospitalization if any, request for any further investigation to be ordered if any. So after the patient has been admitted, then that patient will be seen by an anesthetist for fitness for general anesthesia. So if you have referred a patient, you need to give a form to him stating that what is your provisional diagnosis, why you are admitting the patient, why you want to carry out those procedures under general anesthesia. You write in brief and send it to the hospital for admission. The hospital will get your admission letter and then admit the patient, and they'll send a referral to the anesthetist to give fitness for general anesthesia. So once the patient is seen by an anesthetist, the anesthetist will give fitness. So the anesthetist, after giving fitness, the following steps has to be advised to the patient before the surgery. The patient must be advised of mild sedation to relieve anxiety. Oral feed has to be withheld for at least 6 hours prior to GI. This is to avoid post-operative vomiting and so that aspiration will not happen if there is going to be vomiting. So nil per oral for at least 6 hours, so that when the patient is being subjected to general anesthesia, there is no post-operative vomiting and aspiration into the lung. Oral prophylaxis for oral surgery procedure if preferable. Face preparation for males. The face preparation means a clean shave. If there is going to be any form of incision that is planned in the submental region or submandibular region or in the temporal region, the preparation means they are preparing that region for incision or access to that facial skeleton. Details of pre-medication, which is left to the discretion of the anesthetist. Medically compromised patient has to undergo their regular routine physician checkup and then take their regular medication. Indication regarding requirement of transfusion has to be considered. This is more important because depending on the procedure, the anesthetist will ask for the volume of blood loss. If it is going to be a small simple fracture, you don't anticipate any loss of blood, then there is no need for any transfusion blood to be reserved. Whereas in case of any oncological surgery or oral cancer surgery, resection and reconstruction, or any form of Leaffoot 1 or orthognathic surgery, then you need to reserve blood so that if there is an unprecedented incident and then if there is going to be blood loss, then that blood has to be replaced. So the most common replacement will be whole blood and that depends upon the volume of blood loss. So if it's going to be less than 10 to 15, it will be replaced just with IV fluids and Ringer lactate solution, which is a plasma expander. Or if it is going to be 20 to 30, the plasma expanders are going to be the one which is going to be replaced, like Hemosil and other things. And if it is going to be 30 to 40%, then your whole blood has to be replaced to adjust the volume and the cells that is lost during the surgical procedure. So the anesthetist will decide on the volume of blood loss and will advise for replacement. So fluid and electrolyte balance of the patient has to be always kept in mind when such major procedures are being planned. So any other special consultation required if the patient has got a pre-existing problem, then consent has to be signed. When you ask for a consent of a patient, mostly the consent should be in the patient's own language, or the patient which the patient knows or can understand. A consent signed in a language which is not understood by the patient will not be considered valid legally. Apart from the previous things, the following additional information has to be provided to the anesthetist for him to plan for the procedure before and after administering general anesthesia. So you need to tell him a brief outline of the surgical procedure, what you are going to do. So here on comes the anticipated blood loss, the duration, and so forth. The duration is more important because the patient has to be given a muscle relaxant which works for a certain period of time. So if you tell them the duration, the anesthetist is planned for a muscle relaxant that has to be given for that particular period of time, so that the recovery will be faster when you finish the surgery. So it has to be simultaneous. You need to tell the patient or the anesthetist about the position of the patient, where the operator is going to be, or where the assistant is going to be, and where the tray is going to set up, so that it doesn't hinder the anesthetist from administering IV fluids and so forth. Probably I'll show in the next few slides where exactly they will be positioned. The necessity for intramaxillary fixation. This is more important in the maxillofacial region, because when the patient is intubated, the normal one always, which is preferred by a surgeon, will be nasotracheal intubation, because you're going to operate in the oral cavity. So if there is going to be intramaxillary fixation, it has to be informed, so that if there is any collection in the throat, it will be removed before the intramaxillary fixation is given, or plan for an intramaxillary fixation after the patient has been extubated. You also need to tell them whether you're going to give them a nasogastric tube post-operatively for feeding if cannot take oral feed, so that the nasogastric tube or Ryle's tube can be inserted before extubating, so that it stays in place. You also should inform the drugs that are likely to be injected to the patient during anesthesia. So those are the things which gives you an idea about the operating room procedures. So for the operating room procedure, there are 4 things which you need to know: the topographic location, additional provisions, bacterial isolation, centralization of equipments and instruments. So usually the OT or the operation theatre will be located in a more remote area where it cannot be accessed by everybody. So that is what it means. So that there is no common people coming and going through that way. So operating room personnel and their duties. So you will have an anesthetist, you will have a surgical nurse, you will have a circulating nurse, and you will have a nursing assistant. So this picture shows that there is a surgeon operating. Then you have a assisting nurse. Then you can see an anesthetist sitting at the foot end. So before surgery, you know how to scrub, which was taught you in infection control. So you need to scrub, you need to gown, and you need to know how the glove has been worn before surgery. So this is very important because when you enter into the OT, it is totally aseptic. So the strict asepsis protocol has to be followed in the operation theatre. So preparation of operation site and draping. So this is a patient who is to undergo a cleft lip surgery. So you can see a tube coming out from the oral cavity. This is called orotracheal intubation. So the anesthesia is administered through orotracheal intubation and the airway is maintained orally, whereas in other patients where you wanted to operate in the oral cavity, then a nasotracheal intubation will be given. So the same tube will pass through the nostrils and then it will enter into the lung for administering anesthesia and maintaining the airway. So you can see the marking of the lip. So I hope last class was about a cleft lip. So this is how the marking is been made. So with the marking, incision has been placed. The tissues excised. So cleft surgery, the tissue is not deficit, it is always excess. You put the place and get sutures on line. We try to reconstruct the vermilion border of the lip, which will give an aesthetically pleasing appearance. So you can clearly see the lip being reconstructed and the nasal floor also. So after post-operative surgery, there are two things that we need to be taken care of. One will be the systemic care and the other one will be local care. The systemic care is the one if the patient is medically compromised and if it has to be kept under control, for example a diabetes or hypertension or any form of immunocompromised patient, so that has to be maintained normal so that the post-operative care is uneventful. Whereas local care is that you've seen a previous case, there is a wound, that wound care, maintaining that wound, dressing up the wound daily and caring for that wound to heal without any form of infection is the local care that you are going to provide in those situations. So these are two things that has to be taken care post-operatively. So after the care is given and the patient is stable, then it becomes the responsibility of the surgeon to discharge the patient. The surgeon decides whether the patient can go home. A discharge summary has to be provided. In the discharge summary, the following has to be mentioned. So with the name with reference number, the date of admission, date of surgery and date of discharge, diagnosis, the treatment rendered to that patient and the medication that has been given, then post-op discharge instructions for follow-up care like how to maintain oral hygiene and so forth, and the patient has to undergo any physiotherapy in case of any physiotherapy that is to be done. then it is the responsibility of the surgeon to call back for a review and look how the healing is and advise further. So surgery is not complete until patients stop complaining post-operatively. So it is the responsibility of the operating surgeon to take care of the patient's complaints and address it so that the surgery becomes more successful. Right. Right. Thank you.